before we figure out what's going on in Florida, we thought it'd be important because we have to react to what the federal plight is, and Al Cardenas has been gracious to come down and rejoin us, a great friend of mine for a long time. He's now with, in addition to running the Cardenas firm, he's in Washington with a preeminent law firm, Squires, Patton Boggs, and he's rated AV by Martindale-Hubbell, was named one of the most influential leaders in the Latino community by a number of leading publications. He was former chairman of the Republican Party. He has led political efforts in Miami-Dade, and now, of course, does a lot of international work. So Al went from a local Miami-Dade guy to now pretty much running the world, and so we're anxious to hear his thoughts on what's happening in Washington.
Thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, you know, my accolades have significantly decreased since my mom's passing last year, but I appreciate them anyway, Tom. Well, here we are. You know, I'm going to give you, what I like to do is give you an update, kind of a generic update on the elections in Washington and across the country, just the gubernatorial and AG races. And then I'm going to talk to you about, hey, what's left to do in Washington before the end of this year. Many of my friends will say, well, Washington's not going to do anything. I said, well, if they don't, they'll shut down. You know, as all of you know, we've got 12 appropriations bills that need to be passed or continuing resolutions done, and none of it has happened yet. At the end of the fiscal year in Washington is on September 30th. So here we are. Just a little bit about the races coming up. You know, as Oscar Wilde said, well, before you know it, the summer's collapsed and winter's here. And in Florida, that's especially so because we have one of the latest primaries in the country, and everybody's concentrating the primaries. And boom, they're over, and now you only have a few weeks to go before a general election, and everybody gets into a frenzy. That's why the timing of this conference is so important. But keep in mind, for the 30 years that I had been involved in Florida politics, and Ryan will cover a lot more of this, cabinet races don't really break till the last 2 or 3 weeks. You get some initial numbers, but then they kind of hold steady for a few weeks, and then the last 2 or 3 weeks, margins change. And the reason for that's pretty obvious. I mean, you know, the average voter kept up with what was going on in their primary, voted their preference. Those growing numbers of independent voters and NPAs didn't have a chance to vote. And so now everybody's beginning to figure this out, and it'll take them 3 or 4 weeks to get to know the candidates and make their choices. So you know, I don't expect real numbers that'll mean anything to come about till like third week in October, but you know, we'll keep an eye anyway. I'll give you the 50 shades of red and blue nationally, and see where that takes us. But in the House, you know, the Democrats must gain 25 seats for majority control. They currently have 193 seats. Republicans have a majority with 237 seats, and there are 5 seats vacant. There are over 30 predicted toss-up seats, and reports, you know, Charlie Cook and others currently give Democrats as high as a 60% chance to retake the House. You know, after seeing the turnout numbers in the primaries, I don't agree with that, but it's a 50-50 deal. And whoever wins a majority in the House will win with a margin of 2 or 3 votes. And so the question moving forward for next year is, well, how the heck, you know, you can't govern with a 25-vote lead. You know, how are you going to govern either party with a 2 or 3 vote lead? So, you know, there's a group I'd been long affiliated with who thinks they're going to seize the opportunity, this group known as No Labels. They have 48 members of the House. They call themselves the Problem Solvers Caucus. It's the second biggest caucus in the House. It's made up about half and half of center-left and center-right candidates. And they, you know, when this is over, they want to have a seat at the table, not only in picking the speaker, but in getting legislation to pass. And so whoever gets elected as speaker needs to figure out where that's something they want to do and break with old tradition where the majority party really calls the shots. So we'll see what happens there in the House. Florida's got a few key races with respect to that, and so we'll see what happens in Florida. In the Senate, there are 35 Senate seats up for re-election in 2018. The Democrats must gain 2 seats in order to secure the majority. There are 8 toss-up seats. These are in West Virginia, our own state of Florida, Indiana, Missouri, North Dakota, Arizona, and Nevada. And so, it doesn't take a lot of math to figure out that Democrats must win 5 of those 8 in order to, to win the majority in the Senate. Republicans right now, based on the numbers on those seats, are favored to retain the Senate majority, but again, it'll be a very narrow margin. And gubernatorial races, they'll be held in 36 states and 3 territories in 2018. There are 9 toss-up races for governor in Michigan, Ohio, Connecticut, Florida, Alaska, Nevada, Minnesota, Iowa, and Maine. And Republicans currently have a majority of seats with 33. It's going to be hard to keep 33, but the Republicans should keep a majority of them. As far as AG races, and Speaker mentioned our fine candidate, Ashley Moody, who's going to do a great job, but there are 10 competitive state attorneys general seats, and Florida, again, Florida's in every one of the the toss-up seats for governor, for Senate, and for AG. The key toss-up races are in Colorado, Florida, Michigan, Nevada, Ohio, and Wisconsin. We currently hold a majority. The Republicans do with 27, and the Democrats 21. I've got the full breakout by each race. I was going to print the breakout. I was going to print the issues, things, a lot of pages, and to distribute today. And then I said to myself, you know what? I don't really feel like traveling with all that stuff. And so, but here's what I don't have assistants like Slater and Steven there. What I do commit to do is if you give Slater, Steven, Chris Shaney, or myself your business card, I'll be happy to mail those to you. I mean, it has a breakdown per state, per race, a number of different polls, and you'll really know what's going on if you do that. So feel free to do that. I'll just give you the, kind of help you after what I've said, give you a quick rundown on the president's approval ratings as of August 13th, which of course, it could be eons ago, but in West Virginia, the approval was 63, disapproval 33. He's got a 30% margin. West Virginia Senate race is a toss-up, but boy, Manchin's going to have to do a lot of work to overcome a 30-point presidential approval rating. Tennessee is 56-40. It's a plus 16. That looks pretty good for Marsha, Blackburn, and the others. Missouri, 52-44 plus 8. That's a toss-up state. Indiana, 51-45, surprising. I mean, that's where the vice president's from, and so they have a 5-point lead there. Montana, only 51-46. To me, that was surprising as well, plus 5. North Dakota, only plus 4. And Florida, 50-46 for a plus 4. In Arizona, it's even, 48-48. Ohio's 48-48. In Utah, he's under. Can you believe that? 47-49. Nevada, he's under, 45-51. That's tough for Dan Heller. Pennsylvania is 45-51, minus 6. And Wisconsin, that's a tough one. He's 41-56 at minus 15. Those were August 13th dates. But, I'll tell you what the Republican opportunities and Democrats are real quickly. The Republican opportunities are you have 10 Democrats running in states that the president won. Of the 10 states, President Trump won 5 by more than 18 points. And those were Indiana, West Virginia, North Dakota, Missouri, and Montana. So, that's pretty good pretty good tailwind to have. The Democrat opportunities are in Arizona, Nevada, and Tennessee primarily, with Senator Flake retiring, a very bloody primary there. There's the exposure. Secretary Clinton won Nevada, and making Senator Heller the only Republican senator running in a state that did not vote for President Trump, which is an interesting statistic. Texas, Utah, Nebraska, Wyoming, Mississippi, limited opportunities for Democrats. So then I have the breakdown for all the races, but I think I mentioned to you that if you send me your info, I'll be happy to do that. And I want to give you the update on what's going on in Congress, because for those who think not much is going on, there is. I said earlier, the White House has 3 big priorities for Congress to complete before the midterms. One, pass the appropriation bills, at least 9 of the 12, before the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th, and Congress has next week off. So, we're running out of time, out of runway here. The 3 of the 12 appropriations bills will probably end up with CRs because agencies like DHS, State Department, and others, there's very little chance something can pass, and so accept a CR. The White House wants to pass a farm bill, which, as you know, is mostly a subsidy bill, which has resulted from the tariffs that the president imposed on other countries, and so Iowa and other places are really hurting, and so for obvious political reasons, they want to pass those subsidies before the midterm elections. But I could tell you there are a lot of Republicans reticent to do that. They think, well, how do we come up with a tariff policy to help the country and then end up spending $600 billion to subsidize it? The second factor, I think, that's going to make it hard to pass and may have some political consequences is this hurricane. No one knows what the cost would be to the federal government, but if it's like $150, $200 billion, where do you get the money? Already we have close to $1 trillion predicted for this fiscal year as a deficit in our budget. Imagine the hurricane money and the subsidy farm bill money that we hadn't counted on. That gets us over $1 trillion, which is, it's never happened unless it's time of a world war or something. So we've got some issues there that we'll have to see how to resolve, but the timeline's very, very, very quick. And then, of course, the third goal is to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. I think, as all of you know, that decision was postponed. We're supposed to vote in Judiciary this week, and Chairman Grassley postponed it till they meet again. So that's a top priority. The lawmakers are moving ahead with a plan to strike deals on major spending legislation. House and Senate appropriations are going to have a formal conference tomorrow to negotiate final spending bills covering defense, labor, HHS, education, interior, environmental, financial services, transportation, HUD, and ag. They plan to pass a final version of a package which is likely to pass before November, and that's a military, construction, VA, energy, and water and legislative branch appropriations. It'll pass by the House today, hopefully, and then Senate Appropriations Chairman Shelby's also called for a vote in the Senate by the end of the week. So I think those are likely to pass. If lawmakers can complete their goal of sending the President 9 of the appropriations bills, they'll have secured roughly 90% of the federal discretionary spending. And so, as I said earlier, they're going to leave Homeland Security, Commerce, Justice, Science, and State and Foreign Operations bills until after the election, primarily to punt on the border wall funding, which has become a big thorn in Congress. There's Tax Bill 2.0, which House Ways and Means plans to pass. I see zero chance of it passing. For a major reason. As Congress didn't pass a budget this year, and unless you pass a budget, you need 60 votes in the Senate instead of 51. and there's no way they're going to get 60 votes. And so, plus it's intended to cost about $657 billion. Its primary purpose is to make permanent the individual tax cuts that were passed last year in 2017. And so, that's where that is. The opioids package, earlier this year, the Congress appropriated $4.7 billion bill, $1 billion of which they're going to send to the states. Florida needs to fight hard to get its fair share because we, like other states, have a pretty significant crisis. They have another bill, that's being bandied about, the Opioid Crisis Response Act of 2018. They were supposed to vote on it this week, and they punted because they didn't have the votes, and so we'll see where that is. And then lastly, trade. President, which is important to our state, President ratcheted up trade threats against China again. Think about this. We import from China about $500 billion a year of goods. He's already moved forward to implement $200 billion of those being subject to tariffs. And now the White House is working on an additional $267 billion. So in essence, if that happens, there'll be tariffs imposed on everything we import from China. And of course, that will result in a major trade war, the consequences of which we're not sure about, of course. So that, to me, if you ask me in terms of world economy repercussions, U.S. economy repercussions, I would put that number one in the list of economic indicators, see how that ends up. NAFTA, interestingly, Mexico and U.S. are pretty much in agreement on NAFTA. But as you know, the Congress needs to ratify it, and you don't have the votes in the Congress unless Canada is included. And the president has said that if Canada's ripping off the U.S., and if a deal can't be reached for them to join so that the new bill can pass, he'll apply a 20% tariff on the cars in addition to the other tariffs. So. Water Resources Development Act, Tom, by the time you have your forum, there will be a lot more to say about that. Lawmakers announced a deal that could see infrastructure legislation in the House floor this week. I don't know what's going to happen with the Senate, and we'll have to see. That bill includes hydropower measures, drinking water improvement, and so we'll see more about that. My sense is that the president has threatened a shutdown of the government. Paul Ryan and McConnell have already told him that's not happening, and so whether or not they actually pass these 9 appropriation bills, all 12 appropriation bills are going to get passed either by bills or through continuing resolution. So I put like at 1% the chance of a government shutdown. And that's all I have for today. I've got a lot more information on both of those, both the legislative aspect of it and the races around the country. Happy to send you that information. Just give one of us your card and we'll do that. And thanks for having me. Thank you.